I'm Marcus Huskins, a producer, mixer, engineer out of Toronto, Canada. And today we're going to be having a look at Revoice Pro version 3. Now, we've made a vast array of improvements on this release. The first thing that you're going to notice is that the program operates much snappier. It's smoother, and there's a general performance increase right across the board. Your processes are going to happen faster, the algorithms are sounding better than ever, and we've added some exceptional sounding tools for you to adjust your time and pitch. This has really made Revoice Pro a one-stop shop for all your needs, whether you're working in music production or post. What we're going to do here is have a look at a real-world example and how we can use some of the new features to streamline our workflow. Now, I'm going to be working in the Pro Tools environment today, but the concepts and workflow that I'll be taking you through are applicable across the board, regardless of what DAW you decide to work in. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to get our audio from our DAW into the Revoice Pro session. Now, you'll notice that I've opted for a similar naming structure in terms of my Revoice Pro session, meaning that I have a lead vocal, I have a harmony 1 double, and a mix reference that I'm going to be bringing in. The mix reference is actually just an instrumental. And then I've got the appropriate output track set up in terms of what I need for my processes. We're going to get into this later, so don't worry too much about this for now. So let's hop back over to Pro Tools, and now we need to start getting our audio from the DAW over to Revoice Pro. So basically selecting the region or clip, selecting the track we need it to go to, and clicking capture. Okay, now that we have all these tracks sent over, we're going to be spending the rest of our time in Revoice Pro until we need to spot these tracks over at the end. Now, one of the most powerful features we've included in version 3.0 is the ability to take any region and turn it into a warp region. You can do this by simply right-clicking and selecting Make Warp Region. So let's take a minute to talk about what this means. In previous versions, you were pretty much married to your guide track, meaning that in terms of timing, if you wanted to make any changes, this would have to be done in an external editor or your DAW prior to importing it into Revoice Pro. Or you could create yourself a new guide track to impart that timing onto your guide, essentially creating a fixed guide. Now, this is no longer an issue because with the ability to turn a region into a warp region, we can now have full control over its time and pitch. Essentially, you can get your guide track right in the pocket and in the pitch exactly where you need it before using it to create your APT functions. All right, so we're going to start going through this track, our lead vocal, which will be our main guide, and we're going to make any necessary adjustments to the time and pitch. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to solo this track by pushing the 1 on my keyboard. Next, I'm going to select a playback range by dragging through this playback range bar here. This will allow me to hear in just that range. Let's have a listen.
16 years later in this young lady.
Okay, I've already heard something that I want to adjust. I'm just going to use my T key to kind of zoom in here, and then I'm going to center it out a little bit. So the way she says young lady, I'd like to make some adjustments to that.
16 years later in this young lady.
In 3.0, we have the ability to select a block and shift-click to select all the blocks in between. Or you could also just grab your marquee tool and select them like this. If I now right-click this, I can actually add 3 warp points. Now, for anybody who's ever worked in Pro Tools with Elastic Audio or Logic Pro with Flex Time is going to understand what this means. Essentially, what's happening here is we're anchoring down before and after, and then we're able to use this middle point to make some adjustments which will time compress or expand the audio. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make some fine-tuning adjustments to move these to exactly where I need them. Now, it's important to note that I'm not actually moving the warp marker and doing any time compression or expansion. I'm just moving the location. So by selecting Alt, I can basically put this exactly where I need. This one I'm just going to anchor down at the very end of this word. This particular one I will put right about here. And you know what? I'm going to add another manual one right here. By right-clicking, I can just click Add Warp Point. I'll use my scrub function. So right about there is where I need that to be. So I'm just going to click the Alt key, and I'm going to make sure that that's right centered there. Now, I'm also going to add another one right here. And this will allow me to make all the changes I need to get this sitting in the pocket right where it needs to be. And I'm going to make an adjustment make some adjustments to my playback range so I'm only listening to what I need to listen to here.
Later in this young lady.
Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this over a little bit, and I'll extend this and this.
Later in this young lady. Later in this young lady.
I'm going to move this over even further.
Later in this young lady.
Okay.
Later in...
That's perfect. Now I want to move on to make some additional adjustments. So I'm just going to set a new playback range here. Somewhere to here is good.
Into a crowd who needed to see she...
Okay, this note here. Let's tackle this. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. Now, I can just basically grab this block, select it, and move it up. Or if I wanted to, I could hold down the Alt key, and it's just going to snap to the nearest semitone.
Into a crowd who needed to see...
So I'm going to move this up a little bit more. And let's just make an adjustment to our playback range. I can just put this exactly where I need it, right click, and set the start to playhead.
She tried and...
You know what? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to move this up a little bit as well. I'm going to select all of this though. And you know what? I just want to make some fine-tuning adjustments so if I go to modify values, I can actually smooth the selected group so that everything that's happening here is happening as transparently as possible.
She tried...
A little bit too much. I'll just bring it down a little bit.
She tried and tried.
Okay. It's working for me. Let's continue playing.
She tried and tried.
Okay, got a bit of a drift happening here. So I'm just going to select this here. And again, holding down my option, I'm going to just pull this up.
Tried and tried.
Move this down a little bit.
Tried and tried. Tried and tried.
Sounds good.
But they rolled their eyes. One day you'll know the meaning of making a choice.
Okay. Let's work on this for a little bit. Going to zoom in here. I could actually click this, right click it, and just snap it to the correct pitch and then back up and have a listen to how that sounds.
Making a choice.
Okay, a little bit too much going on there in terms of her vibrato. So I'm just going to tame that back a bit. Maybe pull this up a bit too. And again, I can right click and snap this to a correct pitch. Let's have a listen.
Making a choice.
Okay, that's not too bad. Zoom out by pushing the R key. Moving along.
Making a choice. She's speaking from her heart, but using her voice. Tears filled her eyes.
Okay, so that's sounding pretty good there. So we've made some adjustments to the actual timing in terms of using warp markers and moving them around to where we need them. And then we've also made some adjustments to the pitch. So now, essentially, we've put our lead guide exactly where we need it to be timing-wise, and we've also made some pitch changes. Next, we're going to move on to our harmony. Now that we have our harmony selected, we got to think about the process here for a second. We know that we've got our lead vocal in terms of timing sitting exactly where we need it to sit. And we know that we want to impart the timing of our lead vocal across everything else. Now, we also know that we have a harmony 1 and a harmony 1 double. So these guys are going to have to be in pitch relative to each other. And we want both of these to be in timing relative to the main guide. So before I go ahead and create a process to impart the timing of our lead vocal guide, which we've fixed using some of the functions of warp regions, I'm going to first put this in pitch. I want to be able to hear the pitch changes I'm making to my harmony 1 relative to the lead vocal, since it has to make sense relative to each other. So I'm going to hit the 2 key, which will allow me to solo both of these. And I'm going to right click this region and select Make Warp Region. Now with this selected, I can basically listen to both of these guys in solo mode. So let's start from the top and let's hear how it's sounding.
16 years later in this young lady, speaking to a crowd who need...
Okay, so I got a feeling that this harmony is probably out across the board. So this would be a good time to test out what we can do with the auto detection. So I'm just going to right click, select all, and then I'm going to right click again and just click correct pitch. Basically what this has done is it snapped all of these notes to the nearest pitch relative to the performance. Now, it's also important to note that whenever you're doing something in an automatic function, that you should always listen to make sure that it's done exactly what you need it to do. So let's have a quick run through.
16 years later, and this young lady speaking to a crowd who need.
Okay, so we've already run into a problem here. I'm just going to delete this, and I'm going to click play from here.
Speaking to a crowd. Speaking to a crowd who needed to see.
All right, let's hop into a full preview here. And I'm just going to correct this one note that needs to be corrected.
She who needed.
So this is the one that we need to work on. Just going to zoom in here. And I just need to snap this basically up to probably somewhere about there.
Who needed to see.
And I'm actually going to grab this too, and I'm going to bring this in line. Then I could actually select these two, modify values, and smooth these out.
Who needed to see, she tried and tried.
Okay, that's sounding good to me. Let's move over.
But they rolled their eyes. One day you'll know the meaning of making a choice. She's speaking from her heart, but using her voice. Tears.
Okay, something happened there.
Using her voice.
One of these notes.
But using her voice. Using her voice. Tears fill her eyes.
Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, if I had the time, I would obviously always suggest doing things manually, but when you're in a pinch, it's nice to know that you've got an auto function that can help you out. All right, so now that we've got the pitch taken care of on our harmony track, and we know that it's in pitch relative to the lead vocal, now we can start creating our processes. So for the first one, I've got my selected audio here. I'm going to click the B key. Now, the first thing you're going to notice in this new process panel is that we now have the ability to choose the presets straight from here. So from this point here, we're selecting an APT. We're going to select the selected audio is going to be the length. Now for the preset, I'm going to hop into factory presets and I'm going to choose tight timing only. So if you remember that we only want to impart the timing from the lead vocal onto this because it has a different pitch. So we're going to select tight timing only. Lead vocal is going to be my guide. My harmony 1 is going to be my dub, and my output is going to be set to my output 1. Now you'll notice I placed my output tracks pretty much directly below the processes. Let's go ahead and click the N key to create this new process. By selecting the E key, it's going to automatically solo my guide and my output tracks. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to press the space bar.
Using her voice, tears fill her eyes.
Okay, so that tightened up that back end perfectly, which is exactly what I wanted it to do. I'm going to go ahead and close this now. Now that we have our harmony 1 track that's been pitch corrected with the timing of the lead vocal, we can now go ahead and create another function that will impart the pitch and timing from harmony 1 to our harmony 1 double. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the B key to create that new process. We're using selected audio to determine the length of the process. And we're going to choose a different preset. This time we're going to go into factory presets and we're going to choose vocal, slightly loose, time, and pitch because we want to have a little bit of play between these two harmonies. Our guide track is going to be our output 1. Our dub is going to be our harmony 1 double. And our output is going to be output 2. I'm going to go ahead and click new process. So I'm just going to close this box here for a second. Now, before I process this, instead of just pushing the spacebar, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push the 5 key. So what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to listen to my lead vocal, which is my main guide, my output 1, which is my time-corrected version of my harmony 1, and then my output 2, which is my pitch and time-corrected version of my harmony 1 double.
Using her voice, tears fill her eyes.
Okay, so those guys are sitting really, really tight now. I'm just going to go ahead and pan the harmonies out hard left and hard right so I can hear a little bit more separation. Now, we can do this in two ways. Either I can click this icon and mouse click and select to pull this left or right, Or I can simply, if you have a smart mouse, use your scroll wheel to be able to pan these. So I'm going to pan output 1. I'll put that on the left. Output 2, I'm just going to use my scroll wheel there, and I'll move that over to the right. Now, you know what? I'm also going to throw in my instrumental mix reference so we can hear everything in context with each other just for this last line, which we knew was the worst part.
Using her voice, tears fill her eyes.
All right, awesome. So it's starting to sit exactly where we need it to. Now, I want to show you another new feature that's included as of 3.0. If we right-click our dub, we now have the ability to automate the parameters within the function itself. So you'll see we're able to choose from the pitch limits, alignment tolerance, pitch tolerance, transfer strength, offset of pitch. So for now, I just want to look at alignment tolerance and pitch transfer strength. You'll see that I'm given a line here, and what I'm actually able to do is click to add automation nodes. Now, depending on certain points in the song and your performance, you might choose to have things a little tighter or a little looser in terms of time and pitch. So you can basically add some automation nodes and change these parameters for the certain parts of your performance. I'm going to right-click now, and let's also add a pitch transfer strength. You can make this automation as complex as you want. There might be a certain point of the track where you feel that it can be a little bit more forgiving in terms of pitch and time. That's all up to you. But you now have the ability to add automation to these particular nodes. I want to show you a quick little shortcut that I like to use. Whenever you're working with a particular process, if you click the Z key and then scroll up to tracks, auto size tracks, you're essentially viewing only the process that you're working on. Now, what this does is it gives you a little bit more room to see exactly what you're doing, and it kind of brings your attention focus to the exact process that you're working on. If I click the X key, I'm going to return back to my main window. So if I were to click this process now, which is entirely different, and click the Z key, you'll notice that I've been brought up to this process. I'm just going to click back to X here. All right, so now that we got our lead vocal, our harmony 1, and our harmony 1 double taken care of, let's go ahead and create a doubler. Now, I don't necessarily want the doubler to happen across the entire track. I'm more or less just hearing it in certain areas of the track. So let's go ahead and click the B key to create a new process. Now this time, instead of APT, we're going to select doubler. Now our lead vocal is going to be our guide track, and our output is already set properly to output 3. Now, by default, it's set to selected audio, but if we create a playback range, it will actually snap to selected playback range. So let's go ahead and use the playback range to determine at what point we want our doubler process to occur.
Into a crowd who needed to see.
So I'm thinking that we should probably have it start at the beginning of this sentence. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so I have a little bit more space to see.
Speaking to a crowd who needed to see she.
Okay. And I think it's going to be over by probably this point. We'll use our scrubber tool. So from this point here. So if I take my cursor and I place it there, I can actually right-click the playback range marker and set end to playback. That's going to give me the playback range that I want.
Speaking to a crowd who needed to see.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead now and click the N key to create that new doubler process. I'm going to close this down. Now, if I click the E key, I'll get the lead and the output.
Speaking to a crowd who needed to see.
Okay, perfect. That's exactly what I want. Now, this time we're going to approach it a different way. I'm going to set my cycle range ahead of time.
One day you'll know the meaning of making a choice.
Okay, so from this point here, I'm going to make this the beginning of my playback range, maybe just before the breath.
She's speaking from her heart, but using her.
Right to about here, I think.
She's speaking from her heart, but using her voice.
And I'm missing the end, so maybe to here. And I'm just going to click my cursor so it just plays from there.
Voice.
And I can bring this back right to here.
In her voice.
Okay, perfect. So that's going to work out. Now I'm going to click the B key again. And you'll notice that it came up as selected audio. Now, if I would have created the process first, it would have defaulted to selected playback range. So I'm going to go ahead and go with these settings again. And the preset that I'm going to apply here is set to vocal moderate. I'm going to click new process. I'm going to close that window. Okay, now I want to show you something really cool. This is a new feature that we've added again as of version 3. If I open up the parameters of this process, you'll notice that in average delay, we now have the ability to have a negative value. In previous versions, the value started at 0. So essentially what this means is that you can have a doubler that can happen a little bit before. So this is automatically set to a 2-channel output. So on channel 1, I'm going to make my selection something like, not too much, but maybe like a -16. And then on channel 2, I'm just going to bring this down a bit here. So now essentially what you've got is a doubler process that has a negative value. So it's actually happening before your guide. So it's giving a whole new level of randomness. So that's a great added feature that we have. I'm going to click the space bar.
In her voice.
And let's listen to that whole playback range here.
She's speaking from her heart, but using her voice.
Perfect. Okay, so now we have everything done in Revoice Pro that we need to do. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a selection of all the tracks. I want to addition everything relative to each other. So I'm going to solo my lead vocal, my output 1, my output 2, my output 3, which is my doubler, and my mix reference. Now you'll notice that I've created these 2 processes of the doubler on one track. And there's a certain way that we're going to deal with when it comes to exporting, so they come in as one file as opposed to having to spot each one of them independently. So let's set a new playback range here. And we're going to listen to our results in context to each other.
16 years later, in this young lady speaking to a crowd who needed to see, she tried and tried.
Okay, so you know what? I just listened to this and I've made a decision that I'm not really digging what I've done here with adding and messing with this timing. So I'm going to make a playback range selection here. I'm going to hop into my full vertical zoom. And you know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm just going to basically get rid of these. All right, so at first thought, you'd probably think that this would be a problem because we've just changed things and we've already created our processes that we're using the lead vocal as a guide track. But it's not going to be an issue at all. All we have to do is simply click the space bar to re-render everything, and all of these processes that were based upon the lead guide track's timing will update.
"16 years later, in this young lady speaking to a crowd who needed to see, she tried and tried."
So perfect. That's another great feature of version 3, is that any changes that you make to your guide track, even after you've created multiple processes, doublers, harmonies, will auto-update when you make any changes to your guide. Now, the way that this works is that depending on the process you've selected, it's automatically going to select the output track. So in this particular instance, I'm automatically selected the output track 1, which is my harmony 1 output, which is based upon the lead guide's timing. If I select this process, I've automatically selected the output of my harmony 1 double, which, if you recall, was a process that imparted the time and pitch from our harmony 1 output. If you have multiple processes that exist within a process block, you can simply right-click within the range of where it is, and you're able to select just that process. So for instance, now I'm just selecting the doubler processes. So it's pretty simple. Just basically select the process that you need, and the output track is automatically going to be selected. Now, let's start with getting our lead vocal back in. So I've just selected that. I'm going to hop back into Pro Tools now. Now in Pro Tools, with the proper track selected and an audio range selected, all I basically have to do is click Spot. So now this has brought in my lead vocal track. Now I'm going to bring it to the harmony 1 track. I'm going to hop back into Revoice Pro. I'm going to select the process that's associated with my harmony 1 track. And now you can see that my harmony 1 track in green has been selected. Back into Pro Tools. I'm going to spot that. Hop back over to Revoice Pro. Now I want to get my harmony 1 double in. So I'm going to select this process, which has automatically selected its output. Back into Pro Tools. Make sure I have the proper track selected. I'm going to click Spot. All right, now it's time to select the vocal double. So you can see that I've already created a stereo track to bring these back into in Pro Tools. Let's hop to Revoice Pro. I'm going to use a different method for exporting here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select a playback range that includes the regions that I want to export. Then I'm going to use my export tracks, and I'm basically going to put these in a predetermined folder that I've already created. I'm going to call this lead vocal double. And you can see that it's going in a file that I've made called Revoice Pro Exports. Now, all I have to do here is select the proper track, which is output 3, and then I want to export the selected playback range. Once I save that, it's going to be ready. So hopping back over to Pro Tools, if we put this in spot mode, we're going to get a dialog box that comes up for any clip that you're trying to drag onto a track. I'm just going to open up my Finder window for a second here, and you'll see that I've created a folder within my actual session for Revoice Pro. And this will allow me to open up this Revoice Pro session if I want to make any changes in the future, but also it's just a handy way to keep everything organized. So here's my lead vocal double that we exported. I'm just going to drag this from the Finder onto this track, and you'll see I automatically have the spot dialog box. By clicking this up arrow, it's going to spot it to the original timestamp. So I'm going to click OK. Now it's perfectly in sync. Other DAWs such as Logic Pro, Cubase, and Nuendo offer simple drag and drop functionality straight to your arrange window. Now that we have all of our tracks sent over from Revoice Pro, let's have a listen to the final product. I'm just going to add my vocal processing back into the chain, and let's see how it sounds.
One day you'll know the meaning of making a choice. She's speaking from her heart, but using her voice. Tears fill her eyes.
Perfect. So you can really see that this software has been designed to be a one-stop shop. There's nothing out there that lets you get your vocals in pitch, in time, create harmonies, create doubles, and get everything sent back over to your DAW. So if you'd like some more information, feel free to head over to synchroarts.com, where you can download a free trial. And if you're an existing Revoice Pro user, you can get information on how to update and pricing. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you again soon.